Hey, it's Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader, and welcome to the Black Belt Leadership Podcast, where each week I'm giving you tips, tools, insights, and resources to help you become a better version of who you are and what you do. This week, I want to talk about night blindness, in particular, rods, cones, and leadership blindness. Now, you may not know, but as we get older, our ability to see at night begins to be increasingly impaired. In fact, according to the National Safety Council, half of all fatal car crashes happen after dark. Now, to me, this is an alarming statistic because only 25% of all driving takes place after dark, but over half of all fatal crashes happen at night. Now, the same statistics from the National Safety Council also show us that people are less likely to wear seatbelts at night. Why? I don't know. They're more prone to fatigue, duh. And they're more likely to be under the influence of alcohol or drugs. But another major contributor to these fatal crashes is night blindness. So how does this happen and why? Most importantly, I know you're going to ask, John, what does this have to do with leadership? Well, let me explain. The human eye is an incredible organ inside our body. It's highly complex in the way it works, and it's very intricate in design. Now, at birth, we're born with two types of photoreceptors that process the light coming in through the pupil in our eye, rods and cones. During the day, our vision relies predominantly on cones. Now, these intricate structures, these cones, enable us to see in color. This makes us unique to many other creatures in the animal kingdom. However, during the twilight of the evening or the early dawn of the day, oftentimes when I'm out hiking with my dogs, our eyes begin to rely on a mix of rods and cones. And as daylight gives way to nighttime, our eyesight relies mostly on rods. That's why in the dark of night, everything appears to be mostly black and white because rods see in black and white. Now, interestingly enough, our rods lose functionality as we get older. Our eyesight begins to change, and not only may we require corrective lenses like glasses or contacts to be able to see clearly, the rods inside our eyes actually begin to lose functionality. In fact, the National Institute of Health says by the time we reach the age of 65, we've lost 20 to 30% of the rod photoreceptors in our eyes. Rods tend to fail sooner and in greater quantity than the cones. So this explains why as we get older, we can still see clearly in the daylight, but we struggle to see in low light situations. And again, according to the National Institute of Health, people that have age-related medical conditions that affect their sight, the loss of rods can be even more profound in the way it creates night blindness for them. Now, add to that, as we get older, our pupils, the part of our eye that expands or contracts to allow light to come in to reach the photoreceptors in the back of our eyes, our pupils begin to shrink with age. Now, don't forget the pupils are those lenses that regulate how light comes in the eye and in what quantity. But as we age, the pupil gets smaller. So that means that even less light can get into the eye and actually reach the rods and cones. And by the time we reach around 60 to 65 years of age, our rods and cones are only receiving about 1/3 of the light they were receiving when we were in our 20s. Now, think about that for a minute. Because of the changes in our eyes, we are seeing the world darker and darker every day. And because of the changes in our eyes that are age-related, something else happens. We become less sensitive to contrast changes. That means it makes it more difficult to recognize and distinguish objects like road signs or pedestrians against the background of low light situations and when it's dark outside and we're relying on our headlights. In essence, as we get older, the world around us gets darker. But that begs a question, why aren't we aware the world around us is getting darker? Well, here's the answer, and it might surprise you. We're not aware of the loss of sight, the loss of light going into our eyes, and the darkness that's taking over our lives because the change is so gradual. It occurs little by little, day by day, and the changes are so subtle, we're not even aware that our sight is fading. We are slowly, ever slowly, going blind. Herein lies the leadership lesson. Now, you knew it was coming, and here it is. The loss is so gradual, so subtle, we're not even aware loss is happening. Day after day, the loss is so minuscule that we become oblivious to the loss. But over time, this loss continues its relentless progress, accelerating ever so slowly until it consumes us. Now, did you catch that? We are slowly, ever so slowly, going blind. And I wasn't just talking about physical sight. I was talking about leadership sight. That's right. Slowly, ever so slowly, far too many people are becoming leadership blind. Now, let me explain. In 2011, my friend and mentor, Dr. John C. Maxwell, released an amazing book, The 5 Levels of Leadership. In that book, he highlighted the growth path for successful leaders. Now, in the first level of leadership, what he refers to as position, John says people follow you because they have to. And at the 5th and highest level of leadership, the pinnacle, think of it as a pyramid, the pinnacle, the top, people follow you because of who you are and what you represent. This is where you achieve significance as a leader. But to get to level 5, and in all honesty, most people will never get to level 5 in their lives. You've got to move from position to permission to production and to people development stages of leadership. Now, each and every one of those stages requires more of you and more from you as a leader. That means you've got to continue your own perpetual journey of personal and professional growth and development. Otherwise, at some point, you stop climbing the pyramid. But here's what happens. Along the way, far too many people choose to settle for less. What happens? They've got their sight on a single goal or a single objective, and once they reach that benchmark in their lives, they believe they've arrived. It's like the individuals that walk into a martial arts school and their only objective is to get their black belt, not realizing that's not the end of the journey. It's a brand new beginning. And people are just like that in the real world. They forget for the leader, when you get to the top of the mountain, you're not done. When you get to the top of the mountain, you're there to pause for just a moment and look across the valley to discover the very next mountain you got to go climb. For the leader, there is no finish line. There is always another mountain to climb. But once you settle, you stop learning, you stop growing, you stop becoming a better version of you. We talk about this on the podcast every week. When you do that, you not only fail to rise to your full potential, you ultimately end up being left behind by the people who are following you, who have now passed you by because you're standing still and you've been left alone. You are slowly, ever so slowly, going leadership blind. Now, in my signature book, Black Belt Leadership 101, I highlight the 10 essential character qualities to become a black belt leader in life. If you've not yet picked up a copy of that book, go to beablackbeltleader.com and get a copy of that today. It is a transformational book that will change your life. Now, as you go through those 10 essential character qualities, and you can learn more about those at beablackbeltleader.com, the second character quality is learning, to be a learner. And here's the gist of that chapter. Black belt leaders are lifetime learners. They are committed to daily becoming better than they were the day before. To start where they are, improve, and then the next day improve a little bit more. Now, black belt leaders commit to a lifetime of learning because, as I said, for the leader, learning never ends. There's always another mountain to climb. And as I've shared before, and I'll share again, in the martial arts, earning the black belt was not a symbol of arriving. Although most people that sign up for martial arts classes, to them, the only goal is to get your first degree black belt, not realizing that there's a second degree, a third degree, all the way up to a 10th degree black belt. And you'll spend your entire lifetime training in the martial arts to get to that high level of success. The martial arts sees the black belt not as arriving, but they see it as a symbol by the instructor giving the black belt to a student as an acknowledgement and recognizing that they are now a serious student, and only then could real learning begin. Much of the depth of the martial arts and its practical application in sport and in combat and self-defense is taught above the black belt level. So the black belt doesn't end their journey when they receive the black belt. It's only a new beginning of deeper learning, deeper understanding, and greater responsibility. They climbed a ladder to get to the top and earn that black belt only to discover there's an entirely another ladder yet to climb. So black belt leaders understand this. They've got to keep growing to continue to be effective. I mean, think about it. The world around us is changing at an incredibly rapid pace today. What got you to where you are today isn't sufficient to get you where you want or need to be tomorrow. Let me say that again. What got you to where you are today isn't sufficient to get you where you want or need to be tomorrow. Prior to 1900, knowledge was doubling about once every century. By 1945, it was doubling every 25 years. Today, given the great leaps we've seen in science and technology and just the quest for knowledge, knowledge is doubling every 18 months. Prior to 1900, 100 years. Between 1900 and 1945, doubling every 25 years. Today, every year and a half. And I was reading just today some articles of some very intelligent people saying that with the advent of artificial intelligence, the sheer volume of knowledge that is now available to mankind is estimated to be doubling every 12 hours. The world around us is changing. And if for no other reason than that, you've got to be committed to a lifetime of learning. But when you reach the point that you say, I've arrived, I've learned all I need to learn to be successful in this endeavor, guess what you just did? You just turned on this big flashing neon sign to the world that says, I'm done as a leader. Now, think about it. World-class athletes, they work hard on their craft to do what? To get to the top of the game. They want to become number one. And they work hard, even harder, to stay at the top once they get there. Here's what they understand. Other up-and-coming athletes are trying to dethrone them as the best of the best. So they're continually honing their craft to stay at the pinnacle of their sport. I mean, the same thing is true in the music world, in the arts and entertainment world. Those that are at the top today, if they don't continually hone their game and get better at who they are and what they do, there's going to be another fad for someone else that steps in and all of a sudden they are number one. You know, my mentor, Dr. John Maxwell, he says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And I've got to agree with that statement because once you stop learning, What have you done? You've yielded the high ground to the competitors. And in a combat situation, he who has the high ground has the advantage. Once you stop learning and you stop growing as a leader, what happens? You start to lose your influence. Slowly, subtly, and over time, here's what happens. You lose your ability to effectively lead yourself and effectively lead other people. Slowly, ever so slowly, you are going leadership blind. Now, black belt leaders do daily what unsuccessful people do sometimes or not at all. They invest in their personal growth and development every single day. They are voracious readers. They are rapid podcast listeners, and they are regular conference attendees. They're constantly seeking knowledge, inspiration, wisdom, and insights from other successful people, learning from their mistakes and failures and adding their collective wisdom to their own. That's how they grow. That's how they get an opportunity to get ahead and stay ahead in life and to truly become the black belt leader they were put on this earth to be. Black belt leaders stay in learning mode their entire lives. They want to make sure they're constantly replenishing their leadership insight so they don't go leadership blind. Now, leaders lead. I mean, that's an obvious statement, but leaders lead. That's what they do. But because leaders lead, it requires that they be able to see the path ahead, to recognize the obstacles, the detours, and the roadblocks that may be in the way, and to navigate a path over, under, around, or through them. They've got to be able to recognize when a follower is falling behind so they can intervene and give that individual what they need so they can get caught up with the rest of the team and keep moving on schedule. But you can't do that if you're leadership blind. But as Carly Fiorina says, the status quo has great power. It's really hard to press forward, never settling for less. But that's what leaders are called to do, to keep pressing forward and never settling for less. But there's always a temptation to slow down or simply settle for where you are and say, this is good enough. You know, going back to the martial arts analogy, it's like getting all the way to purple belt or brown belt, almost to black belt, and then saying to yourself, I've learned all I need to know, and there's nothing more for me to learn. Well, first off, that's not true. There's always something more to learn. But more importantly, what that individual just said is an excuse. It's an attempt to rationalize that individual's unwillingness to learn and to mature and to keep growing. To borrow a phrase from my mentor, Chris Robinson, it's not that you can't, it's that you won't. And that choice is yours. So let me ask you a question. How often have you made an excuse, an attempt to rationalize your unwillingness to keep moving forward, to keep learning, growing, maturing, and becoming a better version of yourself? How many times have you said to yourself, I've learned all I need to learn. I've done all I need to do in this area, and there's nothing more for me here. Guess what? It's not that you can't keep moving forward. It's that you won't. And that choice is yours. You know, next year will mark the 50th year since I started my martial arts journey. Now, I've gone on to earn black belts in multiple systems. It could be easy for me to say, I've learned all I need to learn. John, it's okay to stop where you are. But let me tell you, I'm still learning from gifted instructors that I have an opportunity throughout the year to spend time with. And what are they doing? They're continuing to expand my knowledge and my understanding of the martial arts. They're helping me see new and innovative ways to realistically apply what I've already learned and to take it to an entirely new level. That's what leaders do. Now, I don't say that to brag on me. I say that to point over the fact that I've been now almost 50 years in the martial arts. And you would think at that point, you've learned all you need to learn. But I'm here to tell you from personal experience, there's always something more to learn. And as a leader, you need to understand that. There's always a skill to enhance. There's always something you can improve on and get a little bit better at. The best you've ever done may not be the best you could do with a little bit more work. There's always, as a leader, another lesson to glean insights from, whether it's from your own experience or the collective wisdom of learning from the experience of others. But once you stop learning, what happens? Little by little, you begin to go leadership blind. Or to borrow a phrase from Ray Kroc, the brain trust behind the global expansion of McDonald's, he said this: as long as you're green, you're growing. Once you're ripe, you start to rot. Now, think about what Ray Kroc said. As long as you're green, you're growing. But once you're ripe, what happens? You start to rot. I remember my dad growing tomatoes in the backyard in a little small garden we had. This was Dad's hobby, and it was one of the ways that we got to enjoy fresh fruits and vegetables throughout the year. And I remember going out and picking those tomatoes as they were ripe, and they were fantastic. But if you didn't pick those tomatoes when they were ripe and they fell to the ground, they began to rot. They began to turn black, and they began to be worthless as far as an edible fruit in our lives. Now, nobody wants to be a rotten leader. But just like the tomato, if you're not still connected to the vine and you're not receiving sustenance and still growing, and you've reached the limit of what you're able to do, guess what? You're starting to rot. So for the leader, understand this. If you're not doing what's necessary to continue to learn, to grow, to mature, and to improve yourself as a leader, even if it's only 1% more than you were the day before, you're starting to rot. And nobody wants to follow a rotten leader. But if you've stopped doing what's necessary to learn and grow and mature, to improve yourself, slowly, ever so slowly, you're going leadership blind. So what's the prescription? What's the solution? John, what's the answer to avoid leadership blindness? Well, let me, as a doctor, give you a prescription for leadership blindness. And it's a prescription I've heard from my friend and mentor, Dr. John Maxwell, and he shares the answer, the prescription to this question multiple times throughout the years that I've known him. Here's what he says: the secret to your success is found in your daily routine. Many of you have probably heard that quote throughout the years and didn't know who to attribute it to, but Dr. John says that often, and it's true. That is the prescription to leadership blindness. The secret to your success is found in your daily routine. So remember, black belt leaders do daily what unsuccessful people do sometimes or not at all. So let me give you 5 action steps that you can take starting today to stop going leadership blind. Number 1, invest in yourself. Start your morning getting up 30 minutes to an hour early. Read something educational, inspirational, or a biography of a successful person that you can learn from. And if you want to throw motivational in there, that works too. So spend the first 20 to 30 minutes of the day reading education, inspiration, motivation, or the biography of a successful person so you can learn from their success and their failure. Secondly, in this investing in yourself, determine how you're going to apply one thing you read, or if you're an auditory learner, maybe it's listening to a podcast for you. One thing that you gleaned from that 20 of 30 minutes of investing in yourself that you're going to use today to grow yourself as a leader. That's step 1, investing in yourself. Step 2, I want to challenge you to prioritize your day. So you want to make a list of all the things you need to do. Write them down on a piece of paper, and then identify the top 3 things that you need to get done, and then focus on doing those things and nothing else until those things get done. And once you've identified and you've completed your top 3, the big rocks, as I like to call it, and you've moved those 3 big rocks out of the way, go back to your list, select the next 3 most important things to do, the next 3 big rocks, and then focus on them. Step number 3, stay in your strength zone. Successful people, highly successful people, spend 80% of their day operating in the 20% of the things they're very best at doing. They've taken the time to go through the assessments and understand what they're good at, but more importantly, what they're great at doing and where they can get the biggest bang for the time they're going to invest. And they spend 80% of their day in the 20% of their greatest giftedness. These highly successful individuals understand this. You're great at a handful of things. You're good at many more, and you stink at a lot more of those. Find the things you're great at and spend the bulk of your day doing that. The things you're okay at, find a team member, someone in your organization who can do that 80% as good as you can, and give them that task and the autonomy to go do it so you can focus your time, your energy, and your effort on the 20% of things that you are best at doing. Remember, all of us are better than any one of us. So focus on what you do best. Let them focus on what they do best. And what do you create? You create a high-performance, non-leader dependent team that gets more things done. Number 4, equip other people in your team, in your family, in your organization to lead. One of the roles of a leader, whether at home, at school, at work, or in the community, is to equip those you're leading to learn to effectively lead themselves and then learn to lead other people so they can one day take your place. The job of a leader is to work himself or herself out of a job so they can keep moving up the ladder and continue to do bigger, better, and greater things as they move from success to significance. So what do you want to do? You want to equip other people to lead and release them to do that. Far too many organizations, far too many families, far too many civic groups that are working together with volunteers fail to invest in their greatest asset. And one of their greatest assets, in fact, probably their biggest, greatest asset, are the people that represent their brand, whatever their brand may be. So the role of a leader is to invest in your greatest asset, yourself and your people, and equip them and release them to rise to their full potential, to take ownership of what they're great at, and to do the very best they can to deliver results to the organization so everyone on the team can be a highly contributing member of your organization. Step number 5, repeat step 1. So at the end of the day, before you go to sleep, carve out 30 minutes to an hour to do this. You want to, again, go back and read something educational, inspirational, motivational, or a biography of a successful person that you can learn from. Now, at the end of the day, I want you to do something a little bit different. I want you to journal your wins and your losses for the day. What did you do great at? What did you do not so good at? Where did you fail? And what did you learn from those lessons so you can not make the same mistakes in the future? You can take what you did great, build upon it, make it even better. That which you did okay at, you can continue to scale and improve on that. And the things that you failed at, find out why you failed. And maybe you need to hand that responsibility off to someone else or just stop doing that if it's not working. So you want to journal your wins and losses for the day and what you learned from each. And then the last thing you want to do before you turn out your lights and lay your head on your pillow is this. You want to make a list of everything, every single thing you have to do tomorrow. Don't prioritize it. Just make a list of everything and let that be the last thing you do before you go to sleep. Now, why do you want to do that? Because your subconscious mind, which never sleeps, is going to spend the entire time you're sleeping subconsciously beginning to prioritize that list. So when you awake and you start the investing in yourself and you go back to step one and you look at that list, you now know with great certainty the three big rocks you got to move first. It helps you prioritize your day and to be more efficient, more effective, and more successful. So those are the 5 tips. Now, remember, leadership blindness is real. It affects far too many people who are in leadership positions in name only, but they aren't really leading. What are they doing? They're managing processes, but they're really not leading their people. They're actually letting them down. They're leaders in name only, when in reality, what are they? Let's go back to Ray Kroc. They're rotten leaders. Slowly, ever so slowly, they're going leadership blind. And maybe, just maybe, they're already blind. Think about that for a minute. People are following blind leaders, not because they want to, but because they have to, because maybe that was the only job available at the moment. But if they continue to follow those people who are going blind or already leadership blind, rotten leaders reproduce after their kind. And those individuals, if they continue to follow them and they don't find someone else to lead them where they want to go, they too are going to become rotten. Now, you don't think that's the case? Walk into 90 to 95% of the businesses in America today, and what are you going to see? The blind leading the blind, and they are oblivious to this fact. But if they're not leading themselves well and teaching their other people to lead, they're not bringing an exceptional experience to that audience, to those customers that make them want to come back. So let's make this personal as we wrap up. What about you? Are you going leadership blind? Here's how you know. If you've settled, if you've stopped climbing the leadership ladder, you have become a rotten leader. You're starting to rot. You're becoming leadership blind. But if you have settled, if you have stopped climbing the leadership ladder, guess what? You can get back on the ladder and start climbing. You can choose today to put one foot on the rung, a hand on the rung, and start climbing up once again. Remember, it's not that you can't, it's that you won't. And that choice is yours. And as Henry Ford aptly said, whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. So stop telling yourself, I can't, or I've arrived and this is all I need to do. Remember, for a leader, there is no finish line. The ladder that you climb is a ladder you're going to be climbing the rest of your life. That is, if you want to be a leader. So one bonus step that I will mention in closing, and I want to go back to talking about the world-class athletes, the Tiger Woods, the LeBron James, the incredible athletes that are at the top of their game, the Michael Phelps of the world. World-class athletes got to be world-class, not because they did it on their own. They hired a mentor, they hired a coach to help them not only get to the top, but to stay there once they got there. And if you want to be a world-class master of who you are and what you do, then you too need to make the additional investment in yourself by hiring a mentor or a coach. Now, I love Coach Tom Landry, who was the quintessential coach of the Dallas Cowboys in their early formative years. An incredible man with incredible wisdom. He had an incredible explanation of why you need to hire a coach. Here's a quote from Coach Tom Landry. A coach is someone who tells you what you don't want to hear, who has you see what you don't want to see, so you can be who you've always known you could be. Let me give you that quote again. That is so good. A coach is someone who tells you what you don't want to hear, who has you see what you don't want to see, so you can be who you've always known you can be. Is that what you want? Do you want to become what you've known you always could be? If so, It's a choice you've got to make. You've got to invest in yourself. You've got to have an opportunity to prioritize your day, to stay in your strength zone, to equip others to lead, and to go back and invest in yourself at the end of the day. And you need to hire a coach or a mentor who can help you hear what you don't want to hear, who can help you see what you don't want to see, so that you can become what you've always known you can become. Or you can choose to stay where you are, as you are, stuck, unchanging, settling for status quo, and never becoming the person you've always known you could become. And slowly, ever so slowly, you go leadership blind in the process. You got to choose. My encouragement to you is choose well. I'm Dr. John Terry, the Black Belt Leader. Thanks for joining me, and have a great day.